For you, Kathy, it's a little bit different. Do you think you would have a cool down area in your office, or do you think there's like a place like that that you would be able to use?
I definitely, as a social worker, I'm like, we are the cool down spot sometimes. So I definitely have sensory tools and um, that space for students. So, and I think a lot of teachers, fortunately, have spaces in their classroom for this too, if it can be handled in the classroom. So,
Okay. And so let's say, like, how do students normally get access to your office then?
so this year, I haven't had any of these students. This, I think, mainly we're trying to do like that one-on-one counseling or group.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like if they, I'm like, yeah, last year when I was doing my internship, it's like brief cool down, but most of the time I don't get these students. So, because
Oh,
we're more of the like reflection spot.
mm-hmm.
So,
Okay. So thus far, you haven't had a teacher just like bring a student down and say, like, they're a little upset. Can they cool down here?
um, not if it's been for like angry, maybe like cool down or reflect for other reasons, but yeah, not for anger.
Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
In terms of individualized, again, I was kind of framing this from potentially teachers coming in, but I would emphasize, I think there's a lot of anxiety about what do I do with trauma, or if the term mental health comes up and how do we support that. There's a little bit of a concern of like, is this out of my realm? So for teachers specifically, I know that you're offering support, not therapy. However, for you, Kathy, you get to do therapy, and that's wonderful. But I think it's important for the teachers that you're working with to let them know they're not expected to understand, get the full history, but they certainly can support. We can all support, offer that. And the ways that we can do that are to offer compassionate communication. It's very easy when we're seeing behavioral disruptions to focus on redirecting them. And sometimes in that communication, we can lose a little bit of compassion. So it's important to use some of those, a strengths-based framework, meaning instead of looking at them as having difficulties, more so noting they do very well in this space or with this activity, or so that we can continue to rely on their strengths, the things that they do well, as an example of how to further engage them. And for you, Kathy, building relationships are a very common idea because you do it all the time. And so I've noticed when I work with teachers in the schools, and I'm in schools now, I focus a lot on letting them know I hear that they really care. I hear that they're noticing that there's something going on with this student. And here's some ways to engage with them during those really elevated states that still offer warmth while coming back towards the main focus of the classroom, which is some sort of activity or academic content. I really hope to empower those students. So finding ways to have students who are struggling have a little bit of choice. So I see that we're going to be doing this activity. We're going to do art. So you can either pick this item or this over here. And that is a way to kind of build empowerment so that they don't feel powerless and have some way to kind of exert a little bit of control, because that is something that can come up for these students, a sense of loss of control. And seeking some school supports, and that's you, Kathy. So I really hope that the teachers know how to access you and what types of services that you can offer.
Yes. Yeah.
When a student is activated, I try to remind or kind of let teachers know and staff that it's very important to show care without showing an elevation in ourselves, which is sometimes really difficult to do. So remaining composed, offering empathy, validating, I can see that this is a really hard time. I see that you're upset. And again, using a little bit of behavioral language to redirecting them. So gently reminding them that we need to stay safe. And in order to stay safe, we're going to move from this area, or you can, and then offer a choice to re-engage them. And I say to drink some water, because that does help calm us back down. For teachers, I would note like some natural light and music, if that's allowed, and different times for that, like relaxing music, nothing that's going to amp them up. And then in the toolbox, glitter bottles or something to kind of keep them engaged. Sensory-wise, Play-Doh, if that's allowed. I know when I have Play-Doh, it is messed up all the time, so I try not to get too attached, especially when they're mixed in terms of colors and getting a little bit dry. So these are some of the ideas that we could incorporate for that calming toolbox. Is there anything that you've noted, Kathy, for your office that's been helpful to have like a calming or a peaceful space?
I love all that sensory stuff. I'm like, that was my number one purchase, was my ledge card. So yeah, just making sure there you have a few different tools, so if students don't like one thing, they can find something else.
So you found variety is really important.
Yeah.
So for those who will be watching later, I really ask that you think about what adjustments could be made to your classroom that aren't currently reflected in the list that we've been talking about. In terms of like in the classroom, things that we could actually do to build a routine and sustainability. One of the things that's really helpful is to warn of transitions. It's really simple to want to, or it comes up that you want to maintain the schedule and agenda of the day. But if we don't offer some sort of warning via, in 2 minutes, we're going to stop with our writing activity and we're moving into art, or in 2 minutes, we're going to line up. These sorts of warning of times and transition are really helpful for students who are fearful of instability or have difficulties with flexibility. If we could keep our instructions a little bit smaller and allow for physical mental breaks. I think even those who do trainings or those of us that are at work, there are times when we zone out. And so if we are zoning out or we lose interest, it certainly happens with our students too. So trying to adjust your instruction to kind of allow for that. Again, those mindful practices, using feeling words, meaning like, oh, I'm feeling tired. How is everybody else feeling? And just allowing space for that. So emotional awareness through something very, very short. Some self-care is incredibly important during all of this, not just as someone working with students, but just working in the helping professions. Whether it's you, Kathy, as a social worker, or other teachers, reminding ourselves of ways to maintain our battery full is really important. Self-care is an intentional step and an action for your overall well-being. And here are a few different categories. So the first is physical, and that includes things like making sure that we sleep, that we experience rest. So rest doesn't have to be sleep, but it could be times when you're not doing anything taxing on yourself. And that means you don't have to exercise to be physically self-caring. Although movement is a good idea, because the more that we connect with our bodies, the more we feel kind of connected to our experience and existence. And that includes healthy food. It's okay if we binge on something every once in a while, or I have moments when I would go through some difficult classes, I would go ahead and eat chocolate chips during class because there was something that I needed emotionally. So that brings us into the next one. So these are the ways in which we take care of how we're feeling, how we're experiencing our world. So that means considering stress management, self-compassion, finding joy, finding moments of joy, and emotional awareness. So rather than trying to say, I should do a good job, I should be able to manage this, it shouldn't bother me that the student's struggling. It's very normal that it does, and it's okay to acknowledge. Spiritual, so this is the ways in which we can connect to our existence and our personal values and beliefs. And then social, so this is forming or recognizing your social support systems, your communication style, and that even includes like some boundaries, meaning that there are some people in our lives that are more taxing than others. And then your lifestyle, so work-life balance, which I think is an ongoing lifetime thing to consider and something we're all going to work on. Our hobbies and creating core values. So is the life that you're living in congruence with your values and life goals? And lastly, professionally. So taking care of yourself in this realm would mean taking a break every once in a while. Ongoing learning. So if you're still interested in trauma-related information, like seek it out. Hopefully find some affordable materials, because there are certainly some that are very, very pricey. That might mean asking the school to provide more trainings, see if they have any funds.